All right, so we are looking at the practice test. Remember, if you're watching this and I'm up in the front of the room working with some of the other students, if you want to shift into listening to the live performance, you can do that. Also, remember, you have all of this space to write down notes that you get. These are notes you can add to your notes for the test. You can't use this practice test on the test, but you can use notes from the practice test on the test. So let's jump right in. What is 35% of 60? So there are a couple of ways to do this problem. One is to identify the part in the whole and to use the formula part over whole equals percent over 100. If you decide to solve it that way, the unknown part is the x, the whole is the 60. You have the percent, which is 35 over 100%. Remember, this one is always 100%. You would diagonally multiply or cross multiply. So 60 times 35 is going to equal 100 times x. Let's grab our calculator out. Remember, we get to use calculators and other tools that are real tools. So 60 times 35 is going to give us 210 is equal to 100x. We're going to divide both parts by the 100, and that gives us 21 is equal to x. And so then we know that 21 is 35% of 60. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do this problem is to take the 35% and change it into a decimal, 0.35. Then take 60 times the 0.35. So we would take our 60 and we would multiply it times 0.35, and we also get 21. So either one of those methods is going to give you the same answer, that 21 is 35% of 60. And neither of those answers is any better than the other one. Problem number 2. What is 112% of 50? So I'm going to use the second method to solve this. I'm going to take the 112% and I'm going to change it into a decimal. As a decimal, it is 1.12. So I'm going to take the 1.12 and I'm going to multiply it by 50. So let me grab my calculator. 1.12 times 50 is 56. So 112% of 50 is 56. Now, if I went through that other method, let's just prove that that works. If I went to the other method and I said, I don't know the part, I know the whole, I know the percent over 100. First thing I would notice is this percent is bigger than 100, so this number has to be bigger than 50. I would multiply the 50 times 112 and the 100 times x. The 50 times 112. Let me get that 112 correct. So 112 times the 50 would be 5,600 equal to 100x. And then when I divide this by 100 and divide this by 100, this gives me 56 is equal to x. So in either case, I know that 112% of 50 equals 56. So as you go through the test, remember, it doesn't matter which method you choose. You can use either one. All that matters is that you consistently get the right answer. 3% of 120 is what number? Same idea. Here, one of the things that we're checking is, do you know how to change 3% to a decimal? Remember, the 3 has to be in the hundredths place, so we need this 0 as a placeholder. We need that 0 to push the 3 into the hundredths. Once I have that, I'm going to multiply that times the whole, which is 120. And once again, I'll grab my calculator. Now I know that 10% of 120 would be 12, so this number is going to be less than half of 12. Take my 120, multiply it by 3%, and I get 3.6. So in this case, what number? 3.6 is 3% of 120. Now we get into some problems where we're going to have possibly some stories involved. So Caitlin made 85% of 63 free throws she attempted. How many did she make? This is another percent problem where we can use this because the how many did she make? That's the part. Okay. We want to know which part of the total did she make. So 85 hundredths times 60, 0.85 times 60. She made 51. Caitlin made 51 free throws. If you've ever played basketball, you know it really doesn't matter how many you attempt. You don't get points for your attempts. You only get points for the ones that you actually make. Now we move into some problems that are a little bit different. Now we're not looking for the part. In this problem, we're given the part and we're given the whole. What's missing is the percent. And there are two ways to do this problem. One way is the part over whole equals percent over 100 method. This time we're multiplying 6 times 100 and 96 times x. So we have 600 is equal to, not 99, 96x. We would multiply both parts by the 96. So we end up with 600 divided by the 96 gives us 6.25, which would be 6.25%. That's one way to do it. A second way to do that kind of problem is to take the part and divide it by the whole. Because that's what you're doing. If you look at how this is set up, right over here, we're dividing the part by the whole. So we divide the part by the whole, and then the 100 is what tells us that this is the decimal form of the 6.25%. All right, last one on this side. 14 is what percent of 70? Same idea. I'm going to solve that one the same way. 14 divided by the 70. So I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to divide 14 by 70. And I'm going to see that that's 0.2. That's the decimal form of 20%. Now, that's one that I can check logically because I know that 10% of 70 is 7. And so twice that much, 20% of 70, it would make sense that that's 14. So I can look at that. 20% of 70 is 14. There's my 20%. There's my 14. Okay, now we're ready to look at the second side. So we're going to start with a percent change problem. Remember now, percent change requires us to know two pieces of information. The first piece of information we need to know is the amount of change. Basically, how much did the price change? In this case, it's a price problem. How much did the price change? The second thing we want to know is the original amount. So we're always comparing percent change to what it was originally. Original, I should learn how to spell. Don't tell Mrs. Rogers. Original amount. Okay, so in this case, the change was the difference between 87 and 72, which is 15. And the original amount was the $72. So there was a change of $15 from an original amount of $72. So if we grab our calculator, 15 divided by 72 gives us 0.208, and then these threes that repeat. Let's get the calculator out of the way. So we got all those repeating threes. We're going to round to the nearest full percent. So first off, we don't care about these repeating threes. This 8 is going to go away, but when that 8 goes away, it's going to affect this 0 because it's more than halfway to the next full percent. So in this case, we would be rounding to 21%. So there was a 21% change. That's the first part of our answer. The second part of our answer is, was that change an increase or a decrease? Well, the price went from 72 to 87. So in this case, there was a 21% increase. That is the percent change in this particular problem. So remember, two parts to start the problem: amount of change over the original amount. Amount of change, 15, over the original amount. And then when you get your answer, you have to decide, was that an increase or a decrease? Number 8. Maria has lunch at a restaurant. If her bill was $12.25 and she wants to leave a 20% tip, what's a reasonable estimate for the amount she should leave for a tip? So Maria had a bill of $12.25. We're estimating, which means we're going to round that. And we're going to round that to $12. Step 2, we're going to take that $12 and we're going to look at $12 and what 10% is. So if you take $12 and you do 10%, that would equal $1.20. Remember, 10% is what it would be divided by 10. So the decimal would move one place over. So $1.20 would be a 10% tip. Since it's a 20% tip, we're going to have that twice. And she should leave a tip of $2.40. That's a reasonable tip to leave on a $12.25 bill. Now, she rounded down a little bit, so you might round that up. You might say, I'm going to leave $2.50. That seems like those round amounts like $2.50 make more sense than leaving $2.40. But $2.40 is certainly a reasonable estimate. Number 9, find the simple interest paid if you have a $390 loan at 3% for 5 years. So the $390 we can bring down just the way it is. The 3% we're going to bring down as 3/100ths. We'll bring down the 5 just the way it is. We're going to grab our calculator and we're going to multiply 390 times 0.03. There's our first number. When you multiply those together, you get 1170. That is the interest per year. So each year they're paying $11.70. And then you would take that 1170 and multiply it by 5. There's our 1170 times 5. $58 So that is the simple interest amount. Now, remember, if you are paying that, that's only the interest. If you were to pay off this loan, you would also have to pay off the $390. So if it said what's the full amount due, the full amount due, and that's not asked for in this question, but you never know when it would be asked, would be the $390 plus the $58.50. And since we already have the $58.50 here, we could just add the $390, and that would be $448.50. Number 10, Elber's buying some cleats. Let's get rid of that for right now. Elber's buying some cleats. There's sales tax of 5.5%. What's the total cost he'll pay? So again, we're going to take the $64.95 and we're going to multiply it. Now we have two ways to solve this. One way is to multiply it by the 5.5%. If I do that, if I take the $64.95 and I multiply it by the 55 thousandths, that's 55 thousandths, I get, let's not put the dollar sign in there yet. Go away, dollar sign. I get 3.57225. Now I'm doing money on this problem, which means I have to round to that 7. I have to go to the pennies place. Well, this 2 isn't more than halfway there. So all of that would just disappear with no effect on the 7. And I would have $64.95 plus $3.57 in tax. Now I can go ahead and put those dollar signs in. So I'd have $64.95. And I would be adding to that $3.57. I would pay a total of $68.52 total cost. That's one way I can solve this. The other way that I can solve this problem is to say, all right, I've got the $64.95, and I have to add the tax. Well, the $64.95, that's 100%. That's the total cost of the shoes. And the tax is another 5.5%. I can add those together and get 105.5%. And so that converts to the decimal 0. Excuse me, not 0. I got so. That converts to the decimal 1.055. I can multiply that by the cost of the shoes, the sales tax, or the sales price of the shoes. Take my 64.95, multiply it 1.055, and notice I get $68.52, and those 2's are just going to keep going. There's going to be 3 of them and then a 5. Again, working on money. I've got to go just to the nearest penny. Those disappear. And I have the same cost, $68.52, $68.52. So the method in blue is what you do if you're taking the shoes, figuring out the tax. That's what this is. That's the tax, and then adding them together. That's what this is. The method in purple is figure out the total percent ahead of time. The cost of the shoes, 100%. The cost of the tax, 5.5%. So 105.5%, and then multiply it by what the price is on the shelf for the shoes. All right, we're down to two more. Mr. Jameson bought a toaster oven. It was originally $89. He got a 20% discount. What's the price of the toaster? And once again, there are two ways to do this. Way number one is to say, I've got $89 and I'm saving 20%. So how much is my discount? So take my $89 and multiply it by 20%. I'm going to save $17.80. That's the amount of the discount. Then I'm going to take the price of the toaster. I'm going to subtract the $17.80. So price of toaster minus $17.80. And I'm going to pay $71.20. That is the discounted price. Discounted price. So that's one method of solving this. There's another method of solving it. You're thinking, of course there is, because there seems to be two methods of doing everything here. And whichever you use, totally your choice. The other method is to say, if I save 20%, I pay 80%. So let's take my $89 toaster and let's multiply it by 80%, because really my question isn't what do I save? My question is what's the price of the toaster after I get my discount? So take my $89 toaster, multiply it by 80%, and you're probably not going to be surprised. It comes out to be $71.20. You get the very same answer that you had here. So the blue method is figure out the discount, subtract it from the original price. The purple method is figure out what you're actually paying and multiply the original price by that amount. Last one. Winona got a haircut for $21. She left a 15% tip. What's the total amount that she paid? So Winona got the $21 haircut. How much is 15% of that? So take the $21 haircut, multiply it by 15%, and that works out to be a tip of $3.15. Take the $21. That's the tip only now. If Winona says, here's $3.15, the person who cuts her hair is going to say, yeah, don't come back again because that's not enough money. Add the amount of tip, and I put in like I was multiplying there. That's not multiplying. That's going to be addition. So let me get rid of my other parentheses. All right. Add those together. 21 and 3 is 24. $24.15. The second way to solve that is to say, well, if the $21 is the cost of the haircut, that's 100%. Add the tip, that's 15%. So then the total is 115%. 115% is 1.15. Multiply that by the 21. Let's go back over here. 115%, 1.15 times the 21. And not surprisingly, it is $24.15. So on those three problems, let me scroll just a little bit here. So on these three problems, it doesn't matter So on these three problems, it doesn't matter which method you choose. You can see that either method keeps giving us the same amount, $68.52, $68.52. 7120, 7120, 2415, 2415. Use whichever method works best for you, whichever method makes the most sense to you. All right, remember, if you have any questions, be sure you ask, because tomorrow's the test and then it's too late.